But I do want to move on to the fact that also on the 13th, when you're voting on the ballot, there are also some warrant articles that are on the ballot, and those are the zoning articles. They're all amendments, and it's state law that drives all of this. So that's the reason why some warrant articles are on the ballot, and some of them show up at town meeting later that week. In truth, in New Hampshire, it's all considered town meeting. Election day starts town meeting, and then town meeting is adjourned on Friday night. So those amendments you do find at the beginning of the list of articles. They're on that sample, the town sample ballot, which is green, a terrible green, not as nice as those sample ballots, but it's somewhat together. There was a question earlier this week or last week about, hey, when I go and I look at the warrant online, is that really a final copy? Because there's all these, everything's crossed out, and is that a draft, and is there a more complete copy? So it's good to know that because these are amendments that people are voting on, the way that's set up with the strike-throughs is so that you can see what the language is now, currently, and what the proposal would change in that. So that's why that looks that way. It's to give you a sense of what those changes would actually mean. There are Articles 2 through 11 are all zoning amendments. Tavis Austin, who's our town planner, is here tonight. I'm not going to walk through every single one, mainly in part because I don't understand a lot of what's going on in those, but Tavis can. Does anyone have any questions before we start, and then maybe I'll have Tavis give us a few highlights. How about that, Tavis?
Thank you.
Do we have a question, or is that a wave? Okay, sorry. So I know it's hard to ask questions about zoning amendments because it's very complex in legal language. Tavis, do you want to just highlight a couple things that people may be interested in?
Sure. What might people be interested in? Article 2 is perhaps one of the more straightforward. A year ago, the town made the very same amendment to the Gateway District. This is making the Town Center District permitting process be the same as the Town Center Zoning District. Anyone know the difference? Okay, so that's clear. Let's see what else. There's probably the largest change in here is about section 19 of the zoning ordinance, and that is under Article 10. That's essentially a complete rewrite of telecommunications facilities, or everyone more commonly refers to it as the cell tower ordinance. So this is a rather holistic change, if you will. The process is essentially the same, but the standard that the cell companies or cell phone providers the standard they need to meet is much higher than it was, and it's much clearer. How much do they have to show the planning board before they just are handed a tower? There are many people that believe that the FCC essentially has waived the local authority, and I can say that the planning board made a concerted effort to retain as much local authority over cell towers as they can. And other than that, I'm happy to go through questions. Those are the big hitters on the
Great,
list.
thank you. Yes?
Okay, then I got questions. So you've got all these articles that I don't understand one of them.
Okay.
And although you guys all recommend them unanimously, how can anybody vote on them when they don't understand any of the language?
Okay.
Is any of it at the voting anything more? Do you want me to explain one of them?
Well, I can go. The first one I went through already is Article 2. It was a very confusing process that was adopted back in 2013 as to how an applicant proceeds through the permitting process in the Town Center Zoning District. basically around the circle, up to Winnicott Road. The process was refined and approved at last year's town meeting for the Gateway District.
Yeah.
You know, essentially applicants submit, they go to the technical review committee, and then they have the public hearing through the planning board. And lo and behold, we all sort of overlooked the fact that town center still had very confusing language. So this is
just the town center.
This is just the town center.
Good, okay.
Article 3. For those that dig into the zoning ordinance like I do, you happen to notice that section 4.2, which for the general public is, what are my setbacks? How tall can the building be? How tall can the shed be? How far does the shed have to be from a house? It speaks to every zoning district other than the Gateway and the town center. So all this is doing is saying, please disregard this table if you're in Gateway or town center and go to those sections of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Article 4, last year, who remembers accessory dwelling units coming out last year?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay. In the state's initial cut, they said every single family home could have an accessory dwelling unit. The town could not require, you could require a special permit, but you couldn't put special restrictions on a property. So every one of the single family homes was enabled to have an accessory dwelling unit.
An accessory what?
Dwelling unit.
Oh, dwelling.
Yeah, mother-in-law apartment
Yeah,
is one way of thinking of
I
it.
understood dwelling.
Okay. No accessory drilling units. No. Dwelling unit.
Okay.
So some of us that spend too much time reading this realize that that also would allow an accessory dwelling unit for every trailer in a trailer park, every condo in the condominium association. Every instance where there's a single-family dwelling, you can have an accessory dwelling unit. So the state, after all the towns went through and adopted their accessory dwelling unit language, said, oh, no, you don't have to include manufactured housing parks, you don't have to include condos, you don't have to include clusters. Which is what the zoning ordinance said for accessory apartments years ago, and it's just catching up with that one in Article 4. All good?
Okay.
So voting yes would mean?
Voting yes means that you cannot have an accessory dwelling unit in an open space cluster subdivision, a condominium association, or a manufactured housing park.
So voting yes means you're just accepting this terminology here.
But every one of the single-family homes still gets an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
There is a permit process, it just is no longer a trip to the zoning board of appeals for a special exception and a bunch of other.
Is there acreage requirements?
Just the standard zoning requirements. It's 400, is there an acreage requirement? No, if you have a compliant single-family home, you're allowed an accessory dwelling unit. There are size limitations, you still have to comply with your septic regulations, you still have to prove that you have water, you still have to, all those things, but there's no increased acreage. Article 5. Basically, this says, please put your name and phone number on any sign that you get a permit for. That's a lot of words to say that, but that's what's changing.
The way the government does it, okay. See, this makes sense to me, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
This makes sense to me, at least you're going through it.
Article 6. Allows as an exempt sign those not-for-profit, non-taxable entity signs to be placed off-site. Who's lost? Who's lost? Okay. You want to do an example?
I'll give you an example.
Go for it.
The CMS renewal sign.
Okay.
And there's, can you stand up?
Oh,
Just say that again, I can't hear you.
Just an example would be the CMS renewal sign. So this is allowing those CMS renewal signs to be in Stratham, even though it's for CMS and not necessarily a
The
Stratham.
property owner that has.
And yes.
Right, where the sign is going. You still can't put it in the state right-of-way, you still can't put it in the road right-of-way, but if you yourself want to support a nonprofit activity that's occurring elsewhere, you can put that sign on your property.
Well, then that doesn't really, Matt, that's not an example, because CMS is part of Stratham, and
Yeah.
it's not a nonprofit.
It's non-taxable activity.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Rip any sign fences.
7.
Article 7 probably doesn't apply to anyone in the room. However, this Article 7 relates to density bonuses that an applicant can attain in an open space cluster subdivision. Anybody? No? For a while, there were a number of density bonuses in the open space cluster subdivision to encourage people to create, come on, open space cluster subdivisions. Stratham is one of the few towns left in the state that actually has bonuses at all. Open space cluster subdivisions, in short, it's a 20-acre minimum. You have to start out, at least 50% of it has to go into open space. And this is basically defining the more stuff you do that's for the betterment of the greater community, the more density you'd be allowed. Okay? Some nods more than shakes, okay.
So this allows more bonus?
No, it reduces the bonuses from what's currently on the.
Tavis, I have a question on that.
But encouraging development that provides public benefit. So not just for those in the development, but townwide.
So if this is going to,
Can you speak up, please?
if this decreases the incentive by lowering the bonuses, which I don't know where that money comes from anyway for the bonuses and how much they are, then is that
It's not a financial bonus, it's a
What is it?
density bonus.
what does that mean?
Okay, you're allowed. Would you like a trail?
Okay, okay.
Okay, so an example,
Can I just repeat the question? Because I'm not sure everybody.
what's a bonus is the question,
Well,
basically.
and there's a couple questions, I think.
Yeah.
What is a bonus? And then Melissa, did you have a little more into that question?
So it's a disincentive then to build more cluster developments, is that?
So the question is.
Because if you're lowering the bonus, it's a disincentive.
It's not, well, right out of the gate with an open space cluster, let's say you have 20 acres. Anyone know what the minimum lot size is in town? Okay, so 20 acres means how many houses?
10.
Okay, now in the cluster, the town is going to allow you to put 10 houses on half the land. So that, in a way, is a bonus, because it's theoretically a shorter road or less road, the houses are closer together, et cetera. So other bonuses, if you leave, let's say you turn off of Bunker Hill Ave and you put in a new road and you put in a subdivision. Well, if the original proposal has 2 houses going right on Bunker Hill Ave and you leave those vacant, you get those houses elsewhere in the development. So you get an incentive to leave the frontage open. If you put in, the way this is set up, if you put in bicycle and pedestrian trails that are open and available to the public, that's a bonus. So you don't have to do the bonuses. But if you do the bonuses, if you include the development element, you get a density bonus.
Thank you.
Could you have more than 10 houses in the unit then?
Yes, if you put in,
Open space.
yeah, there, I think the maximum now is 20%. So you get 12 if you do that. There are not many 20-acre pieces left in Stratham.
House bonus or a bedroom bonus?
A house bonus. And there are other bonuses. If you put in 3-bedroom units as opposed to 4-bedroom units, you get to count the bonuses differently. It's a very lengthy section.
Was there another question? Comments or Rebecca answered? Okay, I think you can move on from density bonus.
Thanks.
Article 8. This is literally turning the word a into any. Because questions like that come up in zoning. As soon as you write a, then any begs the question. Or sometimes if it says any, it maybe should say a. This is essentially determining when a lot of record in the Shoreline Protection District triggers the special exception versus a conditional use permit. I love the looks.
Makes sense to me.
Okay? Any questions?
Move on.
On we go.
It's just changing it to.
Article 9. Article 9, if one proposes to demolish a structure or portion of the structure in the town of Stratham that is 50 years of age or greater, it requires, all demolition requires a demolition permit. Any demolition permit where property that is greater than 50 years of age or greater is proposed has a holding period that allows the Demolition Review Committee time to evaluate the property. And the short way of summarizing Article 9 is 30 days doesn't often cut it when you're looking for solutions to preserve, restore, relocate, or otherwise those historic elements. Nothing prevents demolition in town, but this is providing the Demolition Review Committee enough time to evaluate what process or processes may be available to that property owner.
In that wording, then, shouldn't it be minimum 60 days?
No.
Because you're asking for more time?
Right now, it's 30 days. They're
Right, so you're
to double.
asking for more time, yes?
More than the current 30, yes.
Right. But so you're saying maximum of 60, so they still could have 30 days?
Oh, they could have 2.
Right.
Yeah. They don't have to take 60 days. They have
They could
the,
take 1 or 2 days, so,
Correct.
okay. So that's this, I don't understand then how this, if this gets approved, is how it's going to make for a longer length of time of review.
Well, I
you know, it has the option for a longer time.
An option,
Correct. Right now, they
which is a
don't.
courtesy.
Correct.
right now the maximum they're allowed to use is 30 days. So they want to extend it, so the maximum you're allowed to use is longer.
This is still rather short.
Right, but it could still be 1 day.
Correct.
It's more of a courtesy.
Correct.
Okay.
Article 10, we already did with the cell towers, and Article 11 is not mine. So,
Is that why it's not yours?
what's that?
What is the reason for Article 11?
Bruno, Article 11.
This is the current chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Bruno Federico. He's in charge of knowing the stuff about
Are you in favor of adopting the following amendments to the Town of Stratham zoning ordinance? As proposed by petition of Gene Barker. Oh, there's a lot right on the edge of Town Center. It is owned by Eugene Barker. That's why his name is on the amendment. He is requesting that that lot be included in the Town Center district.
Is he here?
I believe the planning board does not recommend this article by unanimous vote,
Why?
No, it says it
because I believe he was given wrong information. He wants to include the parcel in the town center so he can sell it and,
An increased value, essentially.
right.
From a planning principle, there's no justification. If you think of a town center is centric, somewhat circular, and the town, if this were to go forward, you're basically making an inroad into the residential agricultural that's abutting the town center district.
Well, we call it a spot zoning, and we don't want spot zoning.
It's not a center but you have center creep. And quite honestly, there was no proposal that came forward with the rezoning request. So it's unclear what the purpose for the rezone request was.
Well, thank you very much for going Thank you.
Why you have this one.
It's not a question, but this was very helpful, because from year after year after year, when you go in to vote, and I went even to the book to read the detail, and I still didn't know what the devil it was. So I would recommend that this be part of the agenda, okay? And I would suggest Travis. It looked like we kind of caught him on the wing here, but I think it would be good for someone to get up there and give us kind of a layman's term also, whatever, is what those mean, because it's very difficult.
I agree, and I mean, as we were talking earlier about the state RSAs and things like that, believe me, our representatives do not write these things just to make it hard for you to decide how to vote. There are a lot of state regulations and laws that determine exactly how these things need to be presented to the voters, so I agree 100%. That that's really helpful, and I certainly know a lot more about it now than I did before. So Tavis is here. I know he'd be happy to answer other questions. His office is right here in this building. So as time goes on, too, later in the year, now around election season, his staff and he are really great and happy to answer questions.